Lawrence Taylor once terrified quarterbacks across the NFL. But now, as the Hall of Famer approaches 68 years old, recent health scares and troubling public appearances have many fans worried about how he's really doing today. And the latest details surrounding his condition are honestly difficult to watch. Lawrence Taylor was born on February 4th, 1959 in Williamsburg, Virginia. His father, Clarence, was a dispatcher, and his mother, Iris, was a school teacher. He was the middle of three boys. By all accounts, Taylor was a difficult child. As a youngster, baseball was one of the main outlets through which he channeled his relentless energy. He began playing football at age 15, a relatively late age to take up the sport, and played only his junior and senior seasons at Lafayette High School. Because of that short career, recruiters didn't give him much attention. The University of North Carolina coaches were willing to take a chance on Taylor and offered him a scholarship. Taylor's first season in Chapel Hill was uneventful, as he played almost exclusively on special teams, and the following year passed in a similar manner. He was injured and finished with only 8 tackles. But something clicked in his junior and senior years. He became a force. He became an All-American. And NFL scouts who had once overlooked the kid from Williamsburg were now fighting to draft him. In 1981, Taylor was selected by the Giants second overall in the 1981 NFL Draft. And what happened next would reshape professional football. Taylor was named both the NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year in 1981 and became the only NFL player to win the AP NFL Defensive Player of the Year award in his rookie season. That had never happened before, and it has never happened since. He wasn't just a good player. He was a problem that no offensive coordinator had ever seen before. Taylor is considered one of the best players to ever play in the NFL and has been ranked as the top defensive player in league history by some news outlets, media members, former players, and coaches. He has also been described as one of the most feared and intimidating players in NFL history. To understand just how dominant Taylor was, consider this. Washington Redskins head coach Joe Gibbs developed the 2 tight end offense and the position of H-back to prevent Taylor from blitzing into the backfield unhindered. Think about that. An entire offensive formation, a concept that would be used across the league for decades, was invented because of one man. Gibbs himself admitted, "We had to try in some way have a special game plan just for Lawrence Taylor." Now, you didn't do that very often in this league. In 1986, Taylor hit a peak that no defensive player has matched. He led the league with 20.5 sacks, guided the Giants to victory over the Denver Broncos in Super Bowl XXI, and was named Most Valuable Player of the NFL, the second defensive player in league history to receive the honor. The Giants were on top of the world, and Taylor was the reason. Taylor and the Giants won a second championship in January 1991, defeating the Buffalo Bills in Super Bowl XXV. By the time his playing days ended after the 1993 season, Taylor had recorded 1,089 tackles, 132.5 sacks, 9 interceptions, 134 return yards, 2 touchdowns, 33 forced fumbles, 11 fumble recoveries, and 34 fumble return yards. He was a 2-time Super Bowl champion, 10-time Pro Bowl selection, and the 1986 NFL Most Valuable Player. He was also a 3-time NFL Defensive Player of the Year, named to the NFL's 1980s All-Decade Team, the NFL's 75th Anniversary All-Time Team, and the NFL 100th Anniversary All-Time Team. But here's the thing about Lawrence Taylor that most people discuss in hushed tones: the same ferocity, the same recklessness, the same refusal to live within any kind of boundary that made him the greatest defensive player in history. Those same traits followed him off the field, and the consequences were devastating. The drugs didn't start after football. The drugs started from the very beginning. Taylor began using illicit drugs during his professional rookie season, 1981 to 1982. He would pass the NFL's drug tests by routinely obtaining his teammates' urine to submit as his own samples. As his drug habit escalated, he would spend up to thousands of dollars a day on coke and women. His first wife, Linda, once had to pick him up from a crack house. And in one of the more bizarre anecdotes from that era, he once attended a team meeting still handcuffed from the night before by some ladies that were trying out some new equipment, but just didn't happen to have the key. He would recall, for years, he managed to keep the football and the drugs running in parallel. He was producing Hall of Fame numbers on Sunday and destroying himself the other 6 days of the week. In a CBS 60 Minutes interview, Taylor said he first tried cocaine at a party during his rookie year, in 1981, and by his 3rd season, he'd moved up to crack. He wrote in his autobiography that he'd go through an ounce a day. He recalled standing in the huddle thinking not about the defense, but about smoking crack after the game. In February 1986, Taylor entered a drug rehabilitation program. He left after 1 week and decided to use golf as a deterrent. In March 1986, he publicly admitted he had received assistance for substance abuse. But the problem didn't go away. In 1987, he finally tested positive for cocaine and admitted to using it. The next year, 1988, he failed a second drug test, whereupon the NFL suspended him for 30 days. With that, he abstained from drugs until his 1993 retirement, as a third failed drug test would end his career. So think about what actually happened here. Lawrence Taylor didn't get clean because he wanted to be clean. He got clean because a third strike meant banishment from football. The only thing in his life that gave him structure, they gave him purpose, they gave him a paycheck. And the moment that structure was removed, the very thing everyone feared would happen, happened. He would later recall that in retiring, I saw blow as the only bright spot in my future. And that tells you everything you need to know about where Lawrence Taylor's mind was when the game ended. Over the next 3 years, he was arrested twice via undercover police officers for attempts to buy cocaine. Meanwhile, he associated mainly with drug users, and his home usually had white sheets over its windows. I had gotten really bad. I mean, my place was almost like a crack house. Taylor would later explain. His agent Mark Lepselter visited the home during this period. He described what he saw, calling it a suburban crack den that was dank, desolate, disgusting, with holes in the couches. Taylor himself explained how the drug dealers infiltrated his life. He said they'd hand out free drugs because they wanted to be in his world. But once they got in, they took over his world. It wasn't his world anymore. He was just there, just a part of it. Taylor entered drug rehab twice in 1995 and was eventually arrested in May 1996 for trying to buy crack from an undercover police officer. He was sentenced to 60 hours of community service. The financial ruin came in lockstep with the addiction. In Taylor's final year in the NFL, he started a company called All Pro Products. The company went public at $5 a share and tripled in value during its first month, reaching $16.5 a share, at which point Taylor's stake had an estimated value of over $10 million. The company ceased production shortly thereafter, however, and Taylor, who never sold his stock, lost several $100,000. He had been defrauded by several members of the penny stock firm Hanover Sterling & Company, who had short-sold the company's stock, making it worthless. And then the bottom really fell out. In November 1998, Taylor declared Chapter 7 bankruptcy. 4 days after entering a drug rehabilitation center in New Jersey, Taylor was $350,000 in debt, according to the New York Times. From an estimated $10 million in stock value and one of the NFL's highest salaries for over a decade, the man was broke. In April 2000, Taylor was sentenced to 3 months of house arrest, 5 years of probation, and 500 hours of community service for tax evasion. And in 2001, Taylor was convicted of possessing drug paraphernalia in New Jersey. The greatest defensive player in the history of professional football, bankrupt, addicted, and under house arrest. But believe it or not, the worst was yet to come. Despite the chaos of the late 1990s, there were moments where it looked like Taylor might pull himself together. In 1999, when Taylor became eligible for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, there were some concerns his hard-partying lifestyle and drug abuse would hurt his candidacy. These concerns proved to be ill-founded, however, as he was voted in on the first ballot. His son Lawrence Taylor Jr. gave his introduction speech at the induction ceremony. Taylor's ex-wife, his 3 children, and his parents were in attendance. And during his induction speech, Taylor acknowledged them, saying, "Thank you for putting up with me for all those years." He took to golf seriously. In a Sports Illustrated cover story, Taylor credited his hobby of golf with helping him get over his previous hard-partying ways and drug-filled lifestyle. He did some acting work, appearing in Any Given Sunday, The Waterboy, and In Hell. He even appeared as a wrestler in the World Wrestling Federation, defeating Bam Bam Bigelow in the main event of WrestleMania 11. He was a contestant on the 8th season of Dancing with the Stars, partnered with Edith Schlewinska. But Lawrence Taylor's story doesn't have clean chapters. Just when the redemption arc seemed plausible, the devastation returned, this time far worse than anything before. On May 6, 2010, Hall of Fame linebacker Lawrence Taylor was charged with rape for having sex with a 16-year-old runaway forced into prostitution by a man who had beaten her up. Taylor, 51 years old at the time, paid the girl $300 for sex in a Holiday Inn, where he was arrested early that morning. The details are harrowing, and had been staying with a 36-year-old parolee, Rashid Davis, in the Bronx. The two met a few weeks prior at a Bronx bus stop. He provided the girl a place to stay and then forced her to perform sexual favors for others. Early Thursday morning, Davis punched and kicked the girl, drove her to the hotel against her will, and told her she had to have sex with Taylor. The girl later testified she went into the room tear-stained and bruised from her trafficker's brutality. Taylor claimed the minor told him she was 19. In 2011, he pleaded guilty to misdemeanor charges of sexual misconduct and patronizing a prostitute as part of a plea deal. The original charges, handed down by a Rockland County grand jury, included one count of third-degree rape, which could have brought up to 4 years in prison if he was convicted. He was sentenced to 6 years of probation and ordered to register as a sex offender. The trafficker, Rashid Davis, was subsequently sentenced to 7 years in prison to engage in a commercial sex act. That conviction put Lawrence Taylor on the sex offender registry, a designation that would follow him for the rest of his life, and one that would generate headlines repeatedly in the years to come. The Hall of Famer, the man who redefined a position, number 56, now a registered sex offender. Whatever story of redemption people had been hoping for was replaced by a very different kind of story, one that has only gotten more complicated with each passing year. If Taylor's 2010 arrest was the most devastating chapter, the years that followed proved that the fallout doesn't have an expiration date. In 2016, Taylor was arrested in Florida on suspicion of driving under the influence, after the car he was driving sideswiped a police car and struck a motorhome. The two-time Super Bowl champion pleaded guilty to DUI charges in 2017 after crashing into a parked police car in Florida. Taylor received a year of probation. His driver's license was suspended for 9 months, and he would be required to install an ignition interlock device in one of his cars for 6 months. He was also fined close to $1,500 and sentenced to 75 hours of community service. Then came the repeated failures to comply with the sex offender registry, a bureaucratic obligation that for someone else might seem straightforward, but for Taylor became a recurring legal problem. In December 2021, he was arrested in Broward County for failing to report a residence change and placed in jail for several hours before being released on bond. In 2021, he blamed a divorce for not updating authorities about an address change. His attorney at the time said he had been staying at a hotel near his home due to marital problems. For this reason, Taylor did not think he needed to report the hotel as his current address. But the misunderstanding, if that's what it was, happened again. In July 2024, Taylor was arrested in Florida and charged again with failing to report a residence change as a sex offender. He pleaded not guilty on the third-degree felony charge. It was the second time he had been charged with the offense. His attorney, Mark Eiglersh, issued a familiar defense. This situation is a significant misunderstanding. Consider the pattern here: the DUIs, the arrests, the repeated failures to update his address on the sex offender registry. Each incident on its own might be written off as a mistake, but taken together, they paint a portrait of a man who has been unable to escape the orbit of legal trouble since the day he put down a football. And yet, even amid all of this, there were flashes of the old stature, moments where the world reminded Lawrence Taylor that his name still carried extraordinary weight, even if that weight was now complicated by everything else. In July 2025, Trump welcomed Taylor, a Hall of Fame linebacker for the New York Giants, to the White House. For his event promoting youth fitness, Trump signed an executive order that reestablished the presidential fitness test for American children and relaunched the President's Council on Sports, Fitness, and Nutrition. Taylor attended the event and was tapped to serve as a member of the Fitness Council, alongside golfer Bryson DeChambeau and Kansas City Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker. Trump introduced him with warmth. Introducing Taylor, Trump said, "Acknowledged to be the greatest defensive player in the history of the NFL, a friend of mine for a long time." Too long, right, Lawrence? Lawrence Taylor, he's an incredible guy and just been my friend a long time. Taylor's response at the podium was as revealing as anything he has ever said on camera. "I'm just proud to be on this team. I don't know why. I don't know what we're supposed to be doing, but I'm here to serve and I'm here to serve you." Trump faced backlash for inviting Taylor, who pleaded guilty in 2011, to misdemeanor charges of sexual misconduct and patronizing a 16-year-old prostitute, to the White House event centered around youth fitness. The irony: a registered sex offender on a council devoted to American children's fitness was not lost on the public. Taylor's 3 marriages tell another piece of the story. He was married to Deborah Belinda Taylor from 1981 to 1996, and Maritza Cruz from 2001 to 2005. He married his 3rd wife, Lynette Taylor, in 2007. The divorces, the hotel stays in between, the confusion about addresses, all threads in a life that has been turbulent from the very first snap of his career. And then there's his son. Taylor has 4 children, including Lawrence Taylor Jr., his son, who was arrested for child molestation in 2013. The cycle of pain in this family extends beyond one generation, compounding the tragedy in ways that go beyond any one headline. In April 2026, the headlines changed from legal troubles to health concerns. Pro Football Hall of Fame linebacker Lawrence Taylor was discharged from a New Jersey hospital following a battle with a stomach-related issue. Taylor was hospitalized at Morristown Medical Center on April 20th and will now return home to Florida. Taylor, 67, was hospitalized in New Jersey on April 23rd. He was later confirmed to be dealing with pancreatitis. Pancreatitis is the inflammation of the pancreas, and in severe cases, it can be life-threatening. The disease is almost always very painful and requires medical intervention. It can also lead to other serious illnesses, including kidney failure and sepsis. Pancreatitis can be caused by a number of things, but gallstones and alcohol use are the most common causes. Multiple sources confirmed that the Hall of Famer was showing signs of improvement every day. One of Taylor's representatives said 1 week after his hospitalization that the issue did not appear to be life-threatening. After spending over 10 days in the hospital, Taylor was finally discharged. His attorney, Mark Eiglersh, relayed his message. He is grateful to now be on the road to recovery and hopes to be back on the golf course soon. Golf, the same hobby Taylor had turned to back in 1986, when he walked out of rehab after 1 week. The same hobby he'd credited with helping him get over his drug-filled lifestyle in Sports Illustrated. 4 decades later, and golf is still the thing Lawrence Taylor reaches for when the world gets too heavy. Taylor has spoken openly over the years about the physical and personal challenges that followed his playing career, making his resilience in recovery a story that resonates with longtime fans who have followed his journey long after the final whistle of his last game. So where does that leave us? Lawrence Taylor turned 68 in February 2027. He is currently 67 years old. Born on February 4th, 1959, he is recovering from pancreatitis in Florida. He is a registered sex offender. He has been through 3 marriages, multiple arrests, bankruptcy, drug addiction, DUI convictions, and a string of legal entanglements that have spanned 3 decades. He also made headlines in recent years with a string of legal issues, including driving under the influence and repeatedly failing to update his registration as a sex offender. And yet, he remains Lawrence Taylor, a former professional football linebacker who played 13 seasons with the New York Giants and is widely regarded as the greatest defensive player of all time, considered by some as the best football player ever. That's the tragedy of it. The word greatest and the word sad exist in the same sentence. When you talk about LT, his on-field legacy is untouchable. No one has done what he did to the game. Coaches redesigned formations because of him. The position of outside linebacker was permanently altered because of him. 2 Super Bowl rings, 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards, an MVP trophy in an era when defensive players were not supposed to win that award. All of that is real, all of that happened, and none of that can be taken away. But the man who carried all that greatness on his shoulders also carried something else, something that no amount of sacks or Super Bowl victories could fix. The addiction, the recklessness, the inability or unwillingness to live within the lines once the game was over. Taylor said in 2003 that LT died a long time ago, and I don't miss him at all. All that's left is Lawrence Taylor. The question is whether what's left of Lawrence Taylor is enough for Lawrence Taylor. He's still here. He's still fighting. He's recovering, heading back to Florida, talking about golf. But the list of things he's fighting against, the legal obligations, the health problems, the weight of a legacy that carries as much darkness as it does light, that list keeps growing. And at 67 years old, approaching 68, the sad truth is this: for all the battles Lawrence Taylor won on a football field, the ones off the field remain unfinished. That is the story of how the greatest defensive player in NFL history lives now. Not in the glory of Sunday afternoons, not in the roar of Giants Stadium, but in the quiet of a hospital room, in the fine print of a court document, in the registry of a system that does not forget.